How'd you vote?
How did I vote on Musk? I felt like I shouldn't.
Oh, because you want to be neutral?
Yes.
I felt it was like I need a sticker. I voted. I didn't get a sticker.
We're starting with that Elon Musk poll, of course.
I had to vote.
By the way, he did ask users, if he should step down, and saying he would abide by the results. 17.5 million votes cast. That's pretty good.
I know. I voted
57% said, yeah,
when
get out of
Contessa
here.
was on, I voted I voted like 524.
The results are also giving a lift to shares of Tesla, of course. As you know, and we've talked about endlessly, the stock has taken a significant downdraft since, you can see it, 31%. That's just since the close of the Twitter transaction.
What do you think it means if he does step down? Does that mean, people keep saying that means bankruptcy. I keep thinking it just means he's going to find another CEO?
Yeah. Listen, that was always part of the plan. You know, we were looking back. It was in May. Remember when I reported that he was telling the investor group that he had lined up, the $7.14 billion in equity investors that included, Larry Ellison and Mark Andreessen. He was telling them at the time, I'm going to take over. Yeah, that was back in May. That was my story, right? I'm going to be temporary CEO. And then I'm going to find somebody to run the company.
Right.
So I'm going to do it for a few months. And oftentimes these polls, Jim, do seem to be something that he already expects to do. So it's not a surprise. That said, it's not clear who his successor would be.
No, but I have a lot of sources in Twitter. And yes, the disarray is palpable. But in some ways, that's Musk's way. I mean, he really kind of didn't want anyone from the old group. I think that this was so positive. My Chapel Trust doesn't own Tesla, but it's such a positive for Tesla to read that. Because I think the biggest problem here was that there was definitely a sense that he's taken his eye off the ball. And now, he could appoint Joe Schmo, and Tesla goes higher.
Yes. Now, again, it's unclear whether he will listen to the poll, though he said that's his intent.
He did say it was fine.
One would anticipate, again, if this was part of the plan that he was telling investors about last May, that he does have someone in mind to potentially take over. That said, he's the owner. I mean, he's still going to be able to dictate whatever it is he wants to happen. It would be through another person. But to your point, just simply saying I'm no longer CEO would certainly be beneficial for shares that have been cut by a third just since he closed the deal.
Right. But I really want to make this point that Tesla's doing incredibly well. I mean, I think people don't understand. There's a China problem, but I think that China is certainly reasonable given the fact that there's COVID.
Yeah.
Twitter doing poorly because of some ad degradation, given the fact that
there's overall weakness in the ad market. We know about it across the board, and obviously they've added to that with what some of the problems there in terms of advertising. Just advertisers specifically pulling back on Twitter right now, saying we'll wait.
Right, but you could have some consolidation in that industry. I don't think it would be good. I also don't think, by the way, that he ever really put into place what he has in mind for Twitter, if he hasn't something in mind. A new CEO, I think, would be regarded as being positive for both, because I think people think he's doing badly at both.
Yep.
And I think that the idea that he's doing badly at Tesla is just wrong. Tesla's doing quite well.
Yeah.
I think that the fact that he's doing badly at Twitter, who would?
Well, I mean, again, I'm looking at an Oppenheimer piece from this morning. They downgraded Tesla due to Twitter-related risks.
Right.
I mean, that's the number one reason. Musk is increasingly isolated as the steward of Twitter's finances with his user management on the platform. We see potential for a negative feedback loop for departures of Twitter advertisers and users due to inconsistent standards, resulting in increased financing needs that may lead to incremental Tesla sales by him. Just as the competitive environment intensifies.
That vote made me feel like, okay, Tesla sales are done, so buy some Tesla.
Right.
And that I think there are plenty of people who want to do Twitter. I don't know if you read the excellent article by Jim Stewart this weekend.
About CNN?
Yes.
Yeah, I did. And Chris Licht, yeah.
Well, I know Chris for a long time.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, what a terrible job to take.
Tough job.
In the end, he took it.
Yeah.
And he took it, even though there's clearly some problems at CNN. He had to do a lot of firings or had to go along with them. But, I thought the Chris Licht article applied a lot of ways to what could happen with Twitter.
Why?
There's always someone who wants to be the CEO of something.
Uh-huh.
Always. And even if it's a troubled situation.
Right.
And I think that
I don't think James Gorman wants to be the CEO, though.
No, John Ledger does. But
I'm mentioning that because, of course, Morgan Stanley was the lead on the $13 billion in financing. And when you do have the CEO and owner of the company bringing up the prospect of bankruptcy, that doesn't do a lot to sort of settle your nerves.
No, but I do think, look, the reason I just want to play the analogy out for a second is that there is a moment in that article by Jim Stewart where Stephen Colbert says, you got to be nuts to take this.
Yeah.
I think that's going to be the theme of whoever takes it, which is you got to be nuts to take it. But, you're looking at Twitter the way it is, not the way it could be. There's a lot of things that could have done at Twitter that technologically they had fallen behind on.